Hello, project people. You are listening to the soothing sounds, yes, number three, Dale, of the Project Chatter podcast. I'm your host, Val Matthews, and as always, I'm joined by my big mate, Mr. Dale Fung.
Hey Val, so it looks like your soothing sounds is going to stick on the pod. If it's three in a row, I think that is
So
it.
good.
But yeah, hi folks. Another fantastic guest joining us today, Val.
Absolutely, mate. And before we get into it, just a reminder for all those listeners to hit the subscribe button on whichever platform you listen to your good podcasts on, or remember your new channel for YouTube podcasts, our full podcast and bonus bits. Head over to youtube.com. In this pod, we're joined by Mr. Joe Zobkiw. Did I get that right?
No.
Damn it.
You want to try again?
Mr. Job Q.
Q.
Z-
Yes.
Mr. Joe Zobkiw, who is the CTO of Zebrium. Zebrium specializes in embedded systems, client servers, database technologies, mobile and desktop applications, and helps to accelerate product engineering. Welcome, Joe. I got your name wrong. I knew I would. Thanks for joining us today. How are you, mate?
I'm doing great. And we practice too, I mean,
I
I don't
know.
know. I don't
I
know.
know. It's like,
It's crazy.
oh, dude.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's nice to meet you
Yeah,
both.
pleasure, mate. It's our pleasure to have you. We're going to be talking to Joe today about how to be an effective, hands-on virtual project manager. But before we get into the detail, here is Dale with Joe's bio.
Cheers, Val. So I'm going to jump straight into this. Joe has been in the tech industry for over 30 years. He has been a developer, project leader, and team manager in businesses ranging from a few employees to thousands. Having worked in pharmaceuticals, academia, and commercial software supporting millions of users, his experience spans multiple platforms and his interests and expertise include design, development, process, and quality. So short and to the point, Joe, it's, as Val says, fantastic to have
Boom.
you on the pod. Um, and we're going to go all over the show with this in terms of being virtual and hands-on as a project
Exactly.
manager. But before we do that, I thought it'd be great, just if we could expand a little bit on your origin story and perhaps specifically with the project management slant, if that's okay.
Sure, of course. I went to college for music because I didn't want to go to college. So there's that. But during that time, I got involved in computers and, basically kind of became a computer programmer, developer, whatever you want to call it. Um, really writing music software in the very beginning. And that's been a thread sort of throughout my career. Um, but right after college, I managed to land a job writing Macintosh software. I've pretty much been a Mac fanboy as far as that goes. And although I have had a stint on the Windows side of things for a little while in the pharmaceutical industry, um, pretty much everything has been Macintosh, or once the iPhone came out, iOS related, so on and so forth. Um, yeah, so I started out, super green. Um, no one can see it, but almost like Dale's sweatshirt. You know, I had no idea what I was doing development wise. I was not trained to be a developer. I was completely self-taught. But I had a great mentor who was just this, super geeky, really smart developer guy, and he just kind of taught me the ropes of software development back in the early '90s. Um, and it just kind of went from there, different companies along the way, some large, some small, working for myself here and there throughout. And actually, when you work for yourself, um, you're not only constantly looking for the next gig as you're working on the current gig, but a lot of times you're doing all the work, which
Mm.
includes development, testing, talking to clients, planning, and ultimately, which kind of boils down to project management. So that was really, I think, the first time. I didn't realize it back then that I was, managing a project. There was a time where, I don't know if it was probably just me that didn't call it that, because I was too young. I didn't know what I was really doing. But eventually I realized, hey, this is project management, and I've, got this umbrella beneath me that I'm basically managing, from start to finish, including hopefully invoicing the client and cashing the check at the end, at the end of that. And as my career progressed, it, got more official, right? When you're working with a bigger company and there's more people with eyes on you, and there's more people beneath you, working for and with you, you have to take that role a little more seriously than when you're just, kind of sitting in your home office, writing Macintosh or iOS programs for a single client.
No, that's fantastic. And it just goes to show that, I think these days people choose to get into projects in certain, whether you're a project manager or, in terms of what we do, project controls or PMO space. And it's fascinating to hear, the origin stories of how people fall into these spaces and how it sort of evolves over time. But thank you for sharing that. I think it provides those folks a good view of the angle we're coming at, and particularly on how to be hands-on in this virtual world. So just to give everyone an understanding, you're coming at us from the States at the moment. Where are you based?
I'm in North Carolina, East Coast of the United States.
Nice. And the weather's all good there, treating you well?
Generally speaking, it's good. We actually had our yearly snowfall yesterday of about an inch or so. It was melted by pretty much noon. So no shoveling required, which is good.
Nice. Well, I'm sure there's some project management skills involved in that too. And that sounds pretty hands-on. So let's get into it. So let's start. We're living in this virtual world. And everyone, well, unless you're in Australia, a lot of people are working from home. There's these things like Zoom fatigue. There's well-being, isolation, all these various aspects that project managers need to consider when they're managing teams and getting people motivated, etc. Has the skill set required changed? Has the landscape changed in terms of what you need to do to be more effective as a project manager, and what does it actually mean to be hands-on in this virtual world? I know that there's a whole bunch of questions in there, Joe, but I know you're open to sharing all of your thoughts on this, so I'm eager to hear what you got to say.
Well, it all sucks, Dale, if I'm being honest.
I agree.
No, I think a lot of people come at it from different places, right? And my experience aside, the form that I've worked in over the years has been remote a lot of the time. Okay. Number one, I'm an only child, so I was used to like being alone and entertaining myself, and what on a computer or whatever, right? To be honest with you, I think as I've gotten older, and I look back at kind of what I'm doing now and where I came from, I feel like from a personality trait that actually helps in the remote world for sure, because people are alone a lot. Zoom is great, and it is great to communicate with people like this, but there's no water cooler in my house. You don't pass some idiot on the way to the bathroom. Well, some people may in their house, who knows, but that chews your ear off, against the wall for 15 minutes that you're trying to escape. That could actually probably be a good little Zoom business that somebody could whip up. But so there's certainly some people come more prepared to this virtual world than others. I've probably worked out of 30 plus years in the industry, probably 12 years or so have been working for myself, working remotely. Like I said, when I was doing the one-man band stuff, I had clients that I never met. And in the days before video, you would talk on the phone, and through email to basically pin down project requirements and decide what was going to be done, and so on and so forth. So there's I have a handful at least of clients that I've worked with that I have no idea what they look like. I know their voice, but never met them in person, never talked to them via video or anything like that. So there's definitely this is a large scale, right? As far as working, how do I want to say this, I guess, so certainly some people are more prepared for it than others, I guess, is kind of the summary of that.
Yeah. And I spend a lot of my time alone, by choice, I think, Joe, when you got kids in the background. And I know it's difficult when you work from home and you've got all these distractions, but when the COVID thing hit, we saw this rampant adoption, I guess, or adoption, sorry, of technology. I thought it was the best thing in the world. I thought, finally, we're all going to get on the same platform, and it's going to change work the way we know it, and rules are going to change. And I think they are, and I think they will. And then I look at Zoom and I look at Teams, and I'm like, and I'm not saying I'm a software developer, is this the best we've got? Is this the best that we can come up with? And do you see, like, what would you, if you had to build it again, where would you take it? What would you improve? What would be your tips on a nice platform that we could all enjoy?
Yeah, I mean, I think Zoom is, kind of the gold standard in my opinion. I used it for a bunch of years in the job I was at before Zebrium. And I was here in North Carolina. There were people in California that I spoke with regularly, people in Israel that I spoke with regularly. The job I'm in now, I talk to California and India primarily. Zoom works, right? Like, that's one of the biggest hassles right now. I think is people are using a lot of different tools. Google Meet is good too. I'm actually working. We have a contractor that they choose to use Google Meet, and I let him, send me the URL most of the time. So I end up using Google Meet. But interestingly enough, for some reason, the latest version of Big Sur on the Macintosh, Google Meet fails when you're connected to an Ethernet cable. It works fine wirelessly, but not otherwise. It's like, seriously, what kind of bug is this, right? So hopefully that'll be fixed soon. But I was just in a call yesterday where it was more of a webinar, but they decided to use another product that just completely didn't work at all. It's one that's not super popular. So there's a lot of choices right now, number one, which makes it hard because when this whole thing first started, I'm the computer guy in a lot of my circles. And so people call me for advice or help when something's not working, whatever. And it was amazing how many people would call and be just like, what's Zoom? People that work in the real world, they really didn't ever use it before this. Now we're using it to have, drinks at 7 p.m. and, virtual dinners and, things like this, obviously tons of meetings. So there's just a lot of people need to be kind of educated up to this stuff, which I think we're pretty much there now. School is another huge thing.
Completely.
The kids have it down. Like, I've got a couple teens and they're fine with it. They know what they're doing and they're better than me. Especially when it comes to pretending like you're paying attention and not, right? Putting your face up there, but you're actually off here playing a video game. But the teachers, on the other hand, there's a lot of teachers that, whether they're just older, so they're not as in tune with technology as, say, younger teachers, or they just don't have the experience with, video conferencing. I guess that's the old way of saying it. But
VidCon,
it is very hard just to kind of get everybody up to that level playing field. Now, those of us like myself that have been doing this stuff for a long time and pretty much been using Zoom since, since it appeared. To be honest with you, we're all kind of pissed off because now they know the secret. They know
Oh, that was the
they know about working at home. They know about nap time. They know about, going to the kitchen and grazing whenever you want to. It's not good for the rest of us, if I'm being honest.
exactly. And I think, you mentioned the schools. I think it was a rude awakening when went through COVID and we had those lockdowns, and some of us are still going through them. But how not educated, I guess, but how ill-informed or our framework and systems were to apply to it, but how quickly they did it, how quickly they moved to the
Yes.
virtual platforms. I think they were using Google Classrooms, and they had assignments online, and they logged them in, and it was kind of pairing a few different applications together. But those 3 or 4 applications kind of made a classroom
Yeah.
relatively effectively. I mean, we still had to discipline the kids and make sure they weren't just going into the fridge and eating everything and then going outside and playing and saying that they logged in. But
Right.
that's a form of innovation and ingenuity as well. But as I said before, I think, you said it as well, like we've got this baseline now, the secret's out, all the developers are pissed off because we know your secret now. But there's always a next thing, isn't there? There's always a next thing. So what is, I'm trying to get an idea of how do we make this more applicable to project space? Now I know Microsoft will jump on anything where they can turn a profit. And, they jumped in with Teams. I think Teams wasn't ready when they launched it, which is pretty normal for Microsoft as usual. And then they roll out a whole bunch of improvements as they go along, but it's heavy on resources, if you know what I mean. So just to get a bit geeky, but if you have Teams running and a few other applications that, in the project space, you might have P6 and a few other heavy like Oracle, Deltek products, the thing just crashes. And I'm just so looking for something like a light Zoom that would integrate with like a project task manager or some type of way to present and have multiple feeds without having to move from application to application. Do you see that on the horizon?
That's a good question. I have a friend who is a futurist. We should have invited him.
Ooh, yes.
But that's a very good question. And, when you think about that, like I said, I feel like Zoom is the gold standard. It just works. You don't have to mess around with it. I've never had a technical issue with Zoom as far as I could recall. Slack is another one, obviously, that just pretty much works. Obviously these things go down here or there. There's issues, but for all intents and purposes, those are the gold standard, in my opinion. Now, I think eventually this stuff's going to have to be built into OSs. I'm a Mac guy, so, the Mac has FaceTime, but even FaceTime, that's more kind of for friends and stuff like that. I think it supports up to 20 users now, FaceTiming at a time or something like that. But, that's not corporate ready. And so you can't have a meeting with 50 people in it, or you can't do a webinar with it and stuff like that. Eventually this stuff's going to have to be built into the OS, but that all of a sudden that's a bigger problem, because I don't know if on the Mac, you guys remember Sherlock? It was like a way to search on the Mac, kind of maybe like what Spotlight is now, where you can just type something in, it'll find any file, whatever. There was a third-party app that came out that did finding and things like this, and Apple basically implemented their idea and put it in the OS, and that app went away, and so it's known as being Sherlocked. When a company, Apple or Microsoft, whoever, kind of takes this idea, builds it into the OS, so all of a sudden all of these other apps are really kind of no longer necessary. So
I kind of see that now with sorry to jump in there. I kind of saw that with Slack. You mentioned Slack. Didn't Salesforce acquire them not long ago? So I thought the rumors was something around they were looking to kind of position themselves as always against competitors like Microsoft, where Microsoft had Teams, they have Slack, they've got the CRM, they kind of bolt on all these software stacks, and then like you said, and then someone comes in and rolls out an addition patch to the operating systems. And is that how it's going to be, you think?
I think eventually it has to be a default tool. It has to be like an email app, right? Like you can't buy a computer without an email app on it. And for me personally, I use Gmail in a web browser. even though the mail app is sitting right here. I just prefer Gmail. It allows me to, you know, get my mail wherever I am and whatnot. So, but having the mail app, like if you, would anyone even come out with a computer these days that didn't have a mail app? Even if it was a crappy little mail app, it kind of needs to be there. It's a default thing. We're certainly getting to the point where a way to communicate via text like Slack and via video and audio like Zoom probably needs to appear in operating systems as a default tool. The true gold standard tools like Zoom and Slack and Meet, they're still going to rise to the top. People will still, you know, go to the extra effort of installing and using them because they're just better, or, you know, whatever the case is. Yeah, I mean, what it's going to look like, you know, I don't want any VR, AR, none of that crap. You know, that stuff's just, it's CPU hog. You know, I mean,
yeah.
For me personally, this is fine. If I can see your face, if I can talk to you without jitteriness, right? Like, look at us right now. You know, US, UK, and Australia got a pretty darn good connection going here, right? There's like there's no jitter or anything. You'd think we were in the same place. So that needs to be priority. And infrastructure is another thing. You know, I've got a 1 gigabit Google Fiber connection at my house that is pretty cheap these days, $70 US a month. I couldn't live without it now, especially in this time, especially when you have 4 people in a house all on Zoom calls at the same time, or Google Meet or whatever. There's a lot of stuff going on these days in households. So, you know, the infrastructure also needs to be built up to meet sort of this new demand in this new world we live in, because even once COVID is gone and we get back to, you know, as normal as we can get, let's pretend like it's the normal we were at a year and a half ago. People aren't going to want to go into the office. You know, we've all learned now that sitting in traffic for 30 minutes or an hour is a waste of time, unless, you know, I mean, who listens to podcasts, right? I mean, that's the only
ridiculous.
time, you know, I mean, podcasts, I mean, come on.
I
just us.
completely get you, mate. And you're right. I mean, the whole idea of the CBD, you know, is the central business district. I think we need to drop the central, and, you know, people have got better infrastructure setups at home than they do in the office. So we're getting, you know, I've got the same. We got fiber connected. It's super fast. If I went into the office, I might get comparable, but, you know, the view's less enjoyable. So there definitely is a shift, and our value sets have changed now that we know. I think we've convinced ourselves that it can be done at mass, at scale, that we can go from, you know, a couple of people having a flexible working week to, we can have a whole workforce remote. And I guess you guys have known this for a long time. It's just the rest of us catching up. But going, I mean, I'll pass on to Dale in a second, but going back to the hands-on virtual project manager, we talked about Zoom as kind of your, I guess, you're connected to your clients, you're connected to your other team members. It's a way to kind of build rapport, which we're all kind of getting used to. It's not as easy to read a room when you've got, you know, 20 people on a Zoom call, but it is way better than a phone call. So we are progressing. How does one then manage the workload remotely, and you know, how does a virtual project manager do that in the 2021 era?
Yeah, well, the first thing I'll say is that, you know, I think virtual just in general is hard for a lot of people, because it when you would go to the office, you know, you'd leave the house at 8 a.m. You get to the office, you work till 5, you go home, you have dinner, you know, it's a cycle, you do it all over again. When you're working at home, it's 24 hours a day. You know, I'm you know, you can bleep this out if you need to, but, you know, I'm an old guy. I get up to pee in the middle of the night. And when I get up to pee and my phone is sitting on my nightstand, I would be lying if I, you know, told you I did not take a look at it. And sometimes if there's a message sitting there in Slack from somebody in India, you know, because we're in a global world here working, every once in a while, I'll at least look at it. And hopefully it's not something that like someone is waiting for my response on something, because I'm also the kind of person that I like to be responsive. And if it's 3 a.m. and somebody has a question and they're basically stuck for 4 hours until I really wake up, I like to get that response out, as long as I don't have to like go to my computer and boot it up and stuff. If I can just go tap something out real quick, send a message. But one of the biggest problems working virtually, regardless of what your position is just keeping some of your time for yourself, setting up those walls where it's like, look, I'm not going to work before 7 a.m. or before 9 a.m. or whatever's appropriate. And, I'll be damned. I'm going to take 2 hours around dinner time to, be with my family and cook and clean up, and maybe not clean up, let somebody else do that, but, do whatever needs to be done to have the me time. Otherwise, you are not only getting burnt out because, a lot of us are stuck at home, and there's the missing social, access, but you're also just working yourself to death. So that's super huge, just overall, I think. To get back to the question about, project management specifically, one of the big things I think is, you have to have a team that understands how the team as a whole, and I say team, you have to have a development team that understands how the team as a whole functions and manages projects. Like, whether you're developing software or hardware or, pharmaceutical drug or, whatever it is you're developing that someone is managing that project, that whole team needs to know what the expectations are. And the main reason for that is to avoid some of the, issues where you get stuck, especially in the global, the 24-hour clock, where if I wake up, and I've got people in India who are offline by, say, 9 a.m. my time, if I don't look at things before then and ask a question before then, I'm technically probably stuck until 9 p.m., maybe 10 p.m. my time, when that person wakes up, gets online themselves, and, can answer my question. So, and I've seen this happen so many times in so many different projects in multiple companies where, a project manager might look at a certain field, right? The status field in whatever software you use, it doesn't matter. And, one of the first things you do in the morning maybe is you go in, you see, okay, what are people working on? What's the status? How are we doing on the timeline? Blah, blah, blah. Project management, gibberish. And if somebody forgot to fill something in, that can potentially, maybe on one day, it's not a big deal. Oh, they didn't fill this in. I'll just talk to them tomorrow. On another day, it's like, holy crap, this needed to be done. We got another group waiting on this particular thing. This code isn't merged yet. What is going on? Why was this not done? There's no comments. There's no status update. You have no idea what just happened while you were sleeping. It could be a big problem. It could be somebody just dropped the ball. It could be somebody sick. It could be a big deal, or it could not be a big deal, but it's a big deal to you. And you're basically stuck not knowing the answer for 12 hours. That's probably one of the worst situations I think you can end up in, whether you're the project manager or even a developer waiting on another developer, right? Or a documentation person, a website, person waiting on copy to put on the website. I mean, these relationships go all sorts of different directions, but the bottom line is people need to know on your entire team what's expected of them, how the team sort of flows. And communication is key. I try not to go to bed without updating someone as to where I am, if especially if I know it's going to matter to them when they wake up and I'm, sleeping. So I think that's super important. Hopefully that answers the question.
No, it certainly does. And I think, there's I think there's a number of people that I work with that are kind of looking for a silver bullet when it comes to systems and technology, but really you pinpointed it down there. At end of the day, it comes down to communication. Obviously, that's a lot harder, and there's time zones involved. Maybe we can implement some type of genetic manipulation in the future where people don't have to sleep. I don't know, but the idea of having a clear communication and understanding of everybody's role and how that sequence of works happens is not going to go away in the future, it sounds like. So I'll let Dal get a breather in and have a comment.
No, I'm loving listening to this. A whole host of things popped up for me. You mentioned, Joe, about sort of me time and calendar management, and I was wondering, if the default, as you say, is your mail app, and for most that are in companies, it's Microsoft and it's Outlook, and managing that calendar. But then also you spoke around communication and the different tools you might get. We got to throw in the mix there justdo.com as well. It's a neat little tool that you can go out and check out as well. But around meeting etiquette was something that I wanted to drill down into. So one of the things for me, so we'll get back to the calendar management and how to respect people's time because they need time away from the screen and how we can do that. But if we just first focus on meeting etiquette, so you've mentioned you have the Zoom, which is, as you say, your gold standard, but whether you're using Teams or whatever the case may be, a video conferencing tool, you're interacting with someone like this. And for me, it should be trying to replicate in person as much as possible. And so I always try and encourage people, turn your video on. It's okay if you have cats and dogs in the background and your kids are running around. That's normal these days. It's okay. If you feel more comfortable, you can put on a nice shirt or a scarf or whatever the case may be. But put it on because you want to be interactive, and also not only for the person you're talking to, but for yourself. You actually feel less isolated, I find, when your video is on. But some people battle with that because they struggle to see themselves on screen. And two, the other blockers for people doing that. So one was, how do we encourage people to be more interactive? Because if say you were in a meeting in the physical office, you don't have a black screen to stand behind and listen into the meeting, right? It would be quite odd. So why is it now more acceptable to just have your screen off, other than to respect that someone wants it that way?
Yeah, and I'll answer that question for adults, but that's a kid, that's a school problem too. I know people who are teachers and deal with this, and they're constantly trying to get kids to turn their video on. It gets worse, I think, in high school, where kids are laying on the couch, while they're in class, and they're basically phone above their head, just sort of like they're surfing Instagram or whatever. So that's definitely a problem. And for me personally, like I have one meeting, my first meeting in the morning, where we tend to not use video because they have a bad connection a lot of times. And so in that case, it's just audio. It's me and like two other guys, and we just, we know each other well enough where we just talk. It's usually a quick call. And so we just kind of do it that way. That's kind of what we settled on. But I have another call. I have a 1 o'clock one-on-one with a developer, and he's in California, and he prefers video. And usually you can tell, this morning, right? Like as I was getting ready for this call, I was like, oh, I wonder, I know this is a podcast, so it's audio only, but I was like, I wonder if these guys use video when they're talking. And I was kind of trying to think through, like, do they or don't they? Will they or won't they? And sure enough, when I connected, I see Dale sitting there, and I was like, oh, video. Okay, turn on video, because that's almost like the pre-COVID situation of, hey, if somebody puts their hand out to shake your hand, well, what do? You put your hand out to shake your hand, to shake their hand, right? You don't just pull away. It's kind of a courtesy thing as well. But I completely agree. Like, video is huge, being able to see people, especially being able to kind of zoom in and see what's on their wall and maybe what their bank password is. What's that piece of paper they got back there? That kind of stuff. Cameras aren't really up to par. That's really what needs to improve is the cameras, so we can
That is
really,
true. Yeah.
But I think one thing that helps with that is like people need to, talking about the time and stuff a little bit here, you need to get in the headspace of working, right? Like the 7 a.m. meeting, I usually just kind of roll out of bed, I brush my teeth, I kind of, whatever, splash my face, might grab a cup of coffee, a glass of water, and I go talk to these guys for 10 minutes, and then after that, I go get ready for my day. But there's other people that, depending on their schedule, it might make sense for them to get up 30 minutes early, do whatever you do in the morning, take a shower, if you wear makeup, put on makeup, fix your hair, do whatever you need to do, put on like real clothes, not just these hoodies like, we're wearing here, right? I think I've had this hoodie on for about 9 months, but
it's faded.
because it does put you in a different headspace, right? It puts you in kind of, okay, this is my professional mode, and it helps you to get just kind of get there a little easier. Also, having a unique space. There's certainly times where if I'm just working on something, I'll go down in my living room or something and sit by a fire or look outside a window or whatever in a more relaxed space. But if I have a meeting, I tend to come to my office, where I know that, okay, this is a work zone, right? This is generally where I do my work. And when I don't want to be doing work, I avoid the space. So that certainly helps as well. If people just don't like to have their video on for whatever reason, like they have a zit or they just don't like the way they look, the zit is an easy problem. It's going to go away. If you're just not happy with yourself, that's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
And you just sort of need to figure that out, I think.
Yeah.
But it is hard, because especially if you're in a meeting where 7 people have their video on and one person doesn't, like, unless they say, oh, my internet connection's acting up, which is a great excuse these days, maybe that's just the way they always are. They don't have their video on. Eventually some people learn to accept it, as long as they're interacting, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Then there's the situation of, sometimes you're just in a meeting to listen. You might be driving, you might be on mute, you might be making dinner, and you're really just walking around listening to what's going on. You may or may not actually get called on. In that case, if I'm on my phone and it's sitting on the countertop, any video is going to be looking at the ceiling. So, there's certain excuses for it, but yeah, I completely agree. Video is super huge to help to bring people together, and just to see people's facial expressions. You can really tell if they're lying about the status of their task.
Yeah, no, great points. And I guess, as you touched on, there is an element where you do have to respect certain people's, I guess, personal preferences as well.
Yes.
But I think as part of a leadership element to project management, we should be encouraging collective collaborative behaviors, and I think that's what you're alluding to. So I think those are really handy tips for those project managers, and indeed not just project managers but people working in projects to take in and say, actually, the reason we get into projects is to deliver, and to deliver on time and to budgets, and what helps with that is collaboration, communication, all that sort of thing. And because of the current world we're living in, turning on your video might seem like a small thing, or perhaps it's a big thing for you, but there's actually a lot that can be gained from doing that.
Absolutely.
And then if we just jump into the calendar management aspect of things as a PM, so for the examples you've used, it's, cross continents, cross time zones, but those that say were construction based on a site or whatever the case may be, or a single time zone. And one of the things that I've been encouraging as well is away time from the screen, and blocking out in your calendar, that you're going for a 20-minute walk or whatever the case may be, just to have that break, and also to perhaps set up one or two meetings with colleagues where it might be 15 minutes where you're not talking about work. So those, those water cooler, or as we call it in the UK, those coffee kitchen breaks that you normally chat about. So I'm just wondering though, in terms of from a project management perspective, are there other things we need to be encouraging, one, in terms of how our team behaves so that their well-being is taken care of, because we all know well-being contributes to productivity. But then two, also in terms of that software, is there something better than Outlook to manage all of this?
Yeah, I hate Outlook.
Me too.
So I hope Microsoft is not one of your sponsors.
Not yet.
I'll tell you what, I'll say I love Outlook. That way you guys can copy and paste, you can edit if you need to.
Yeah, thanks. For
My pleasure. It's what we do. It's what we do in
Great.
America. We help people.
Got your back.
So yeah, I think to answer the question, Dale, I think a lot of it, to be honest with you, boils down to people's individual guilt. And I say that because taking a walk is a good example, right? Like, one of the great things about working virtually, remotely, that, like I said, I've been doing for years and years and years, is that you get to go out for a walk if you want to. If at 11 a.m. I just got out of a meeting, or whatever time, I just got out of a call and I need to think about what was said, or I'm stressed out about it, or whatever, I might want to go exercise, or, I might want to just, I don't know, go for a walk, go for a drive, go make a cup of coffee, go do something that is not work related, even though technically I'm still working. I think a lot of us are working 24 hours a day in our heads, right? We're a lot of times thinking about work, and I joke with this one guy I'm working with now. He happens to be in New York, thank God, same time zone. We joke about, like, does he bill me actually for just the time that he's thinking? When he's on the loo, right? The loo, is that what you guys call it? Are you billing me for that time while you're thinking? Because I mean, technically, if you're thinking about my project, you're solving problems. Like, from the developer side of me, my little tagline on some of my social media for years was, glorified typist, because that's all developers are. We just know what to type and where to type it. Like, that's literally all it is, right? And so we're glorified typists, but before you can actually get it out, you need to figure it out in your head. And so you figure it out, and that's technically billable time, whether or not you're billing for it or not. In my opinion, it's billable time. But I'm probably not going to ever get anybody to hire me for anything again now at this point.
They're going to check your invoices very carefully. They're going to want it itemized.
24 hours. But
machine, absolute machine.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, impressed.
But guilt, right?
Yeah.
So I have seen, like, tons of my friends who have not been remote workers in general, have had this conversation with me where it's like, well, I just feel like I got to be working all the time. It's like I feel like I need to be available during dinner time and whatever. And I feel like I need to be working up until 10 p.m. at night because other people are. And that's going to basically kill us all, that kind of thinking. Because even if you didn't have a job, if you were just stuck at home during COVID times, people are having issues, right? Like, there are mental health issues just because of that in general, right? Where you may have no other responsibilities other than watching television, feeding yourself, and sitting around all day. Like, even if those are your responsibilities, that's tough in this day. When you add in extra stress of, wow, now I work with even if it's just 3 other people, but 20 people or 50 people, and potentially they're around the world. And, what if they call on me? I need to be able to answer their question right away. I can't take time for myself. That's like a big problem. So one of the things that I've always told my friends is like, look, this is one of the, going back to the joke of, now they know what this whole remote thing is like and how great it is. That's a perk. And that is the water cooler time. That's the time that, you go out to lunch in a real office maybe, or that's the time where you just, play solitaire on your computer at work or whatever people do. You need to carve that out for yourself and really almost make that part of the habit. We sit way too much in front of screens. I'm super guilty of it as well. And I try to break my day up. My personal tactic for this is breaking the day up. I know I have a meeting at 7 a.m. I take that. And then I get ready for my day. I maybe make some breakfast. I know I don't really need to talk to anyone again until probably about 10 a.m. So I got a good potential 3-hour, block of time that I can just kind of do what I need to do. I can run an errand if I need to run an errand. Life still goes on. I still need to mail things, right? I still need to go to the liquor store maybe once or twice, a week.
Of course.
Whatever the case may be. So that stuff is super important. And, I'm not a mental health professional, so I really don't know the answer other than I think everyone just needs to figure out what works for them and make sure that you are not going to bed stressed. If you're not sleeping because of work, that's a problem. You got to figure that out, whether it's talking to somebody or, reading a book or whatever works for you. Yet you got to figure out that balance. And it's just different for everyone. I know people that go in their offices at 7 a.m. and they might not come out till 7 p.m., and they're basically just working for 12 hours straight. That's crazy. That's like Clockwork Orange, toothpicks in the eye, craziness there.
Yeah, no, that is crazy, and that's good advice, Joe. And I think it's quite a delicate balance as project managers to encourage productivity, but also ensure that balance is there, and creating that environment where people feel that it's safe to take a break and safe to be away, and to remove that guilty feeling. So I do agree with you there.
So if I can add one thing real quick.
Sure, absolutely.
If you're a boss, and if whether you're their boss from, an HR perspective, or if you just have people that look up to you and respect you in your place of business, it's up to you to help set that sort of example. Going for a walk is not loafing. Taking time for yourself is not, fluffing off and doing whatever, you know what I mean? It's not ignoring your responsibilities at work. It's taking care of yourself so you can actually do the job better. And if people higher up in the chain of command show that and model that behavior, then people lower in the chain of command, especially new employees. There's a lot of people getting new jobs right now. I was actually amazed at the number of people that I see in my Twitter feed and friends that are, getting new jobs like during this. And it's so weird because, they're getting a job via Zoom, and then they have to figure out the dynamics of their group via, 2D video, right? And that's like gotta be crazy hard. I kind of can't imagine that, actually.
I did that, Joe.
Did you?
I did that I just started 4 months ago. That's exactly how I started a Zoom call. Now, admittedly, I knew the manager, but I didn't know anyone else. And it was very, very difficult experience. So you're bang on there. It's a lot harder to read a room.
Exactly. You gotta figure out, like, well, how does this team work? What are the expectations? If everybody else is not taking time for themselves, I probably don't want to work for them, because I'm too old for that at this point. There's
Yeah.
more to life than sitting in front of a screen all day. But I think it's important to have those lessons. One thing that of the people that I manage, and I just did this one day, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I don't know where this came from, but it worked out so well that I actually just love doing it now. Someone that I managed came, and I don't know if they had a personal issue or it was a personal or a family issue or something, and they needed the day off. And we were really busy. There was a lot going on. We really kind of needed them, but I was like, you know what, we're going to get through this, and basically told the person, yeah, you need to take the time for you. Go do what you need to do. Don't worry about this place. We'll figure it out. And that made me personally feel so good to be able to say that, even though I was maybe freaking out a little bit about what actually needed to be done without this person's assistance. But we all need to, even if you don't feel comfortable saying that kind of stuff to people, you need to let people know it's okay to take care of themselves and do what they need to do.
Yeah.
They're gonna be a better employee for it, and you're gonna be a stronger team for it.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I'll hand to Val in a second and just comment that it's so important, as you say. We're not experts in mental health, but we need to be that first sort of
line of defense.
Yeah, line of defense, ears and eyes, keeping out, looking after our
Yes.
team.
Yeah.
And the only real way is also to look after ourselves as leaders, if we're fortunate enough to be in that position. And so I would then challenge leaders to say, are you taking time out for yourself? Are you taking time away from the screen? Because if you can't look after yourself, how can you look after others? But that was sort of my final comment to that. Val, over to you, mate.
Yeah, no, I'll comment as well. I think there's enough research to indicate that giving people time off makes them more productive, because taking time for yourself, taking time to deal with your own problems. I mean, there's a funny thing that I heard once was like, if everyone could hear everyone else's thoughts, you'd realize how batshit crazy everybody really is. We're all monsters, absolute monsters. The thoughts that come through my head, Joe, I hope to God no one ever hears them. They're
We're
horrible.
all in that same boat. Yes.
Exactly. And I think what COVID and this adoption of this virtual kind of PMing has unveiled is these vulnerabilities. Like, we can actually dress down and we can still get work done. We can have crazy backdrops with all sorts of weird and wild artifacts and pets and parakeets and whatever else you got in your crazy caves, and still get work done. And it's a nice way of informalizing the formal, where if you thought about corporate life, and not like long ago, a couple of years ago, maybe still in some places, suit and tie, corporate attire was a form of facade that you only wore at work, and it actually was a form of exhaustion for a lot of people because it wasn't their true personality coming through. It affected how they managed, it affected how they operated with other people. And obviously we talk about mental health now being a big thing. So it's a really interesting transition. And I just wanted to slide into a new conversation, because this is relevant to yourself, Joe, around CTO. Like, what does a CTO do, and how is it valuable to virtual project managers? Like, why would I need a CTO? How can they help me in my projects and my organization?
Right. So for anyone that doesn't know, CTO technically stands for Chief Technology Officer.
Awesome.
In my case, so Zebrium as a company is about 50 people or so. So in my case, there's no set role, to be honest. I mean, yes, it's an executive position, but I do whatever I need to do. I'm technically, I probably should have said this from the beginning. I'm not a project manager per se. I have certainly done project management. I've served that role throughout my career in a lot of different ways. But there are real project managers who know this stuff way more inside and out than I do. But having said that, like I touched on, I think earlier, I've done a lot of jobs. I've been the developer, I've, designed software, I've kind of done all these things. And for me personally, right now, in a relatively small company as a CTO, I just do whatever I need to do. And some days it's, writing a script. Some days it's talking to contractors. Some days it's doing some design work. Some days it's doing very tedious things, whether it's in project management software, or on GitHub, or whatever the case may be. Some days it's reading over legal documents. Like it's across the board. So technically nobody needs a CTO or me, but no.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of roles sort of have this now. I mean, even a developer role, a developer, when I first became a developer, I was pretty much doing one thing. I was typing code on one app and, working on an application, in an application, just, in a text editor. And I was kind of just doing one thing. Nowadays, like, regardless of your role, there's a lot going on in almost every role. You're the stalker, the bagger, and the person checking out at the grocery register. People wear a lot of hats these days.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers the question or not.
No. I mean, it's your personal experience, so I'm just interested in how that kind of ties in with virtual project managers. So if there's if you're delivering work, it doesn't even have to be project managers, because as you said, the role is versatile. But how does a CTO organize? So let's say you were employed in a bigger corporate organization or a bigger project. Would you, hundreds, maybe thousands of people? Are the roles different, or they're very similar? They're just on bigger scales.
I think they're different. I think a traditional CTO is, has a way bigger office than the one I'm in now. It usually is maybe a corner office with a nice view of some trees, but and they also look at like bigger corporate stuff, right? Like, what technology is this company using, whether it's from what are the tools we're using standpoint, or what are we developing from a tool perspective if we're a software company, things like that. There's certainly different roles. I'm not the CTO of a large company. I'm the CTO of a small company where we're all wearing many, many hats. The president of the company that I work for now, he writes more code, than some developers. He's just constantly writing code. And it's someone that I've known for years. We used to be developers together. I hired him 25 years ago or so, 30 years ago maybe, and then he hired me back, that many years later. It was, I thought he learned his lesson, but apparently not. But so in a smaller company, it's much like the one-man band. When you're a developer, and in my case, I was the only one running a company. I just did everything. You do whatever needs to be done. So certainly different roles. I'm a lowercase CTO.
Yeah. Underscore. Lowercase. That's fantastic. Well, I think the other thing I was thinking about while you were talking there was how we went from. I mean, we're very industrious. We've got this digital kind of ramp, this acceleration of technology, and as you said, you could be up taking a leak in the loo at 3 a.m., but there's this obsession with just grabbing the phone and dialing in, basically, entering the matrix. And these tools were kind of designed originally, I guess, some of them, to make our jobs easier. But as you said, we seem to be working longer, harder, wearing multiple roles. We're getting more fatigued. Do you think that this is inevitably part of our evolution to be, Elon Musk style symbiotic robots, or plugged into some kind of oasis if Zuckerberg gets his way? How do we stop that from happening, and how do we make tools our friends again instead of our hindrance?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think a lot of it is getting used to it. Like, we don't, we don't really know. We're starting to see the devil in this, but I don't know that anyone has reacted to it yet. No one really has the answer of how to smooth it out, how to make
We
it a
like
little
it,
less.
don't we? We kind
Yeah,
of
I
like it.
mean, to be
Yeah.
honest with you, I think yes, everything being said of people being stressed and whatnot. I mean, there is a lot to like, and it is new for, I'll make up a number, 99%. It's new for 99% of people that are doing it right now, and so it's exciting, and it's like, yeah, I get to work at home. Kids hate it because there's no snow days. When it
Mm.
snows, well, hey, you're already at home. Go to frickin' school. you know uh
Yeah,
but
exactly.
so there's certainly some downsides to it like that, but yeah, it's new, it's exciting. I think and it's really hard, because we're in the middle of it now, especially with COVID. There's still no way out of this right now. Like, we need probably another year before people are going to be comfortable, going back into offices. But I drive around my city, and there's a lot of empty office buildings with signs out front. That's going to be an interesting thing to see what happens there, just real estate wise. But
Mm.
I think we need to get out of it. We're in a fog right now. We need to get out of this fog, get far enough away from it, and then look back at the fog and see, and kind of like a post-mortem that you would do. This is project management, right? Post-mortem.
Yep. Yep.
We need to do a post-mortem on this whole thing. I don't want to say experiment, but in a way it is kind of an experiment that was forced upon us.
Does feel
to
like one.
see, yeah, to see,
Yeah.
like, okay, well, what worked and what didn't, and how do you get people to take care of themselves? How do you educate people to, kind of make the right choices and get the work done, but also do it in a responsible way, responsible to themselves, so they're not burning out. So yeah, that's a very good question. We'll know the answer probably in 3 years.
Well, maybe we should park a podcast and we can do a retrospective post-mortem ourselves.
Yeah,
And
send me
say,
send me a calendar entry.
An Outlook? Is that
Of
will that still
course,
be
yeah.
here?
And what else is there? Outlook, best email program going.
Well, talk about pet peeves. I mean, I know we're heading to the end of the pod, but emails, I mean, it's been around for a long time, and electronic mail, if you like, is so what's the word? Just it had a peak. I think it was like early 2000s. It was really great, had some really good features. You might get 10 emails a day,
Yeah.
very easy to manage, organize, respond to, very clean, had your little signature there, looked very professional. And I don't know if you guys are the same. I'm pretty sure Dale gets smashed because everyone sends their stuff to Dale. I just send him blank emails sometimes. But, 200, 300 emails a day, like who is doing this? It's affecting, and you get this. The problem is you get these notifications, don't you, on your phone? It's embedded in your iOS, and you get these little ding, 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 little notifications, 3 a.m. in the morning, and you want that inbox to be zero, God damn it. So how do we stop this? How do we help project managers deal with an inbox of 300, 3,000 emails?
Yeah, filters are certainly your friend in whatever form they take, in whatever email, software you use.
Yeah.
And definitely turning off notifications. Like, we've got a number of GitHub repos, where it's, for people that don't know, it's where you store source code and stuff. And I get tons of notifications for those. And like when I first started at Zebrium, I was setting things up, and all of a sudden I realized, well, hey, my inbox is filling up with these notifications that I really don't care about. I kind of don't want to turn them off, but at the same time, I don't want to see them unless I need to go look at them. So you just need to figure, that's a tooling issue. You just need to figure out, how do my tools help me manage this? Apple has screen time. Screen time's okay. I mean, it's interesting for a kid.
Makes you
like
feel
to
bad, doesn't it? Doesn't it make you
Yeah,
feel bad? You look at it and you goes, you were up 18% in last week, and you're like,
What's really
"Yeah,
weird is like, I'll look at
what?"
mine and it's like you were down 25% from last week. I'm like, that's bullshit. There's no way
Yeah,
that's true.
they're
What
rookie
are they
numbers, and then
counting?
you
Yeah.
have to bump them up. Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, but I think it's a matter of just learning the tools and uh, figuring out, like for me personally, as many notifications that I can turn off, I turn off. Messages on iOS, right? You know, for text messages and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, I get so many, like back in the day, I didn't, you know, I would only get messages from like people I knew. Now I'm getting messages from, you know, the bank, PayPal, the post office, UPS, you know, like tons and tons and tons. And all of those I just have on do not disturb basically. So they get there and I can look at them at my leisure, but that's another huge problem. And I'm to blame, you know, too. These phones are with us way too much, like 24
Mhm.
hours a day. Like literally, if I'm in unless I'm just going down to get a glass of water and coming right back up, you know, if I'm somewhere, it's like you guys have chapstick over there. You know what
Yeah,
chapstick
chewing
is?
gum, chewing gum.
No, chapstick is like a lip balm
Oh
that
yeah,
you put on.
yeah.
Yeah, like
Oh
people are
yeah,
Lip
yeah, yeah.
addicted.
ice, lip ice. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, people are
Lip
addicted to these
ice.
phones
Yeah,
like
lip
they're
ice.
addicted to chapstick, right? Like you know, if I leave the house and there's not a chapstick in my pocket, I'm like having a panic attack that I got to
It's
get the
like digital
chapstick.
crack.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. And you know, that's a bigger problem, right? Like we talk about how do we get out of the sort of the problem we're in now, but these phones have been around for you know what 12 years now, you know, the good phones, I mean, not the crappy phones. um
Yeah.
you
Gotcha.
know,
Yeah.
and that's a problem that's we everyone knows about it. Everyone knows their kids spend too much time on this stuff, but most adults, and I'm guilty of this as well, you know, are like, yeah, but they're not, you know, they're not at the playground smoking weed, so it's okay. But in reality it's not okay. um
Mm.
so yeah, so there's a lot in tech that we have yet to figure out how to control. We're trying in baby steps. Screen time is a nice try, but it makes people aware, I guess, a little bit, and then maybe that's half the battle. But the problem is, you know, as humans, we're all just kind of weak at making changes that are better for ourselves. We all know we should exercise, but how many of us actually do?
Yeah. No, they're good points. I think, thinking back to how you would manage that. I mean, I know a lot of project managers that go out and they would start WhatsApp groups and various other groups just to get that instant feedback, that
Yeah,
camaraderie as well. Obviously, you're working remotely, but even with site teams, even before COVID, you're using all these different apps just to maintain progress. It's like, is that really necessary? And then you're always on, and there's no off
yeah,
button when it's in your pocket. And you go into the, even when you go in the bathroom, it's right next to you. Like, how'd you get in here?
yeah,
It's like a magic wand that won't,
which
you
is
throw it
why
out
I
the window
never
and,
buy that's exactly why I never buy a used phone. You don't know where it's been.
oh, nice
Yeah,
tip.
never buy a used phone. If anyone gets anything out
Yeah.
of this podcast, don't buy a used phone.
Don't buy used
Um,
phone.
but I agree. For me personally, I I I want to be a minimalist. I'm not quite there yet. My sock drawer screams that I'm not a minimalist. But I think it's important with our tools to be a minimal, you know, to be a minimalist as well. Like if I could just use Zoom, I'd be fine. But you know, I've got Zoom, I've got Jitsi, I've got Meet. Uh, I don't know. There's probably something else floating around. You know, I don't need.
WebEx. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't need
Yeah.
3 or 4 different video chat tools. I need one, and I just need it to work. Um, you know, I don't need a ton of ways to communicate with people. Um, just give me Slack. I'm fine. You know, I'm like as long as all my work stuff's in Slack. Yeah, there's WhatsApp for friends and this and that. That's okay. But
Yeah.
the less tools I think as a project manager you have, the better, because then you get to know the tools better. You just learn how to use them better. Your team learns how to use them better. They know what to expect. what they need to put in the tool for you to get out of the tool what you need. The less is more when it comes to all this stuff, I think.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. I think, I'll probably go on my phone tonight and delete a whole bunch of apps, because your
Delete them
phone should
all.
be minimalism. It's ridiculous how many apps I've got on this thing. It's like, oh God.
Yeah.
And there's a new one out now called Signal. It's like a WhatsApp but private, and
Yep.
everyone's jumping on it. And I was like, wait a second, why am I jumping on this? And I'm just getting roped into more apps and
Right.
more apps. And I think you're right. I think the smart virtual PM should minimize their digital interaction and stick to some core systems that they know work and are gold plated and do what they need it to be done, and then stay away from everything else. Yeah.
I mean, back in the day, there was like, a spreadsheet, right? Like a business person they'd have a spreadsheet app on their computer pretty much all day. And like, that was it. Now, like right now, I've got 10 applications running, that I switch between back and forth and do different things. It's that alone is, can be mind numbing.
Yeah. We need one app to rule them all. I did use one that kind of tried to integrate them all. It's called GetStation, and it tried to link and sync all the logins. So you went to one tab and you had all your applications. It was pretty good. Check it out. Anyway, that's it for me. I'll hand over to Dale. Dale.
Thanks, Val. Such fascinating insight. I love being sort of, in the front seat listening to the podcast as a first listener. But this brings us to a section that's called Defend the Indefensible. Joe, you are our second victim. We launched it on our last pod, and it's a bit of fun. And so it's basically, you hear these ridiculous statements, and we have our guest defend it. So you will have 30 seconds after I ask the question.
Well, my internet connection's kind of acting up all of a sudden. It's the weirdest thing.
But yeah, if you get up for that, are you ready?
Unfortunately, sure, go for it.
You got it, Joe. You got this.
Here we go. It hopefully not too difficult, but here we go. So the statement is, we don't need soft skills. Hit your milestones and budgets at any cost.
Yeah, so that's not true, right? And I actually made some notes before this, just kind of different things that I sort of think about when it comes to this whole thing. Soft skills are hugely important, I think. Project managers tend to be the bridge between the business and developers, right? I'm talking software, but it could be hardware, it could be whatever you're developing, right? Scientists developing drugs, whatever it is. But the project manager is this bridge between the business, who all they care about is the numbers and the stock price and whatever else, and then the developers, who are just trying to get through the day, without creating another bug. The soft skills for project manager are super important, because you want to be able to push your team, to get stuff done, but you also don't want to push them so hard that they hate you, and this was always, for me personally, this was a good advantage for me, because I came from the development side. And so I always had the ability to kind of bridge that gap pretty well, because I knew how to talk to developers, and somehow I knew how to just talk to business people, who usually were the people you hated in high school, right? Like, it's like these people. But I always had the ability to kind of bridge that gap. And I think that's super important for project managers, because you're trying to please two sides of things, right? And the project manager is just stuck in the middle. And these things are not always going to come together. There's so many cases, in my experience, where, the development team's chugging along, working on stuff, and all of a sudden the business, pops into a meeting and they're like, hey, we need this new thing and we need it next week. That happens all the time everywhere, right? And it's like, how do you get through that? without your development team quitting. And, the business usually gets what they want. Sometimes there's some hard truths there where it's like, we can't do that. You can't have what you want. But yeah, so bridging that gap is super tough. And so I think that's the end of my statement there. I'm probably going to
No,
start
that's
rambling.
great. That's great. I love how you just were like, I can't defend that. There's no ways I can defend that
Yeah,
statement. It's just not true.
you just can't.
Yeah, and no, it's great. Thanks for that bit of fun. But we hear these ridiculous statements, and we want to put them out there and see, can we defend them? And sometimes you just can't, and that's great. So thanks, Joe. There's so much we covered. Everything from the technology, the behaviors, well-being. I just want to thank you for your time, and joining us all the way from across the pond, or from Val, it's across many ponds. And I just want to come to you for a final thought, Joe, that you perhaps want to leave the listeners with and to take away, other than don't buy a used phone.
Yes, don't buy a used phone. That was certainly, for me, regardless of what role you play on a team, whether it's project manager, developer, lowercase CTO, uppercase CTO, it doesn't matter. Communication is key. And what I mean by that is letting people know kind of what you're up to and how things are going. And, don't wait for the last minute to say there's a problem. Especially in this 24-hour clock world we're in. I often think, what are these folks doing while I'm sleeping? And what am I going to wake up to that's going to be different or unexpected, or what decisions were made that are going to totally, throw the train off the tracks of what I was thinking when I went to bed. We're going down this path. You wake up and all these decisions were made overnight, and now everything's different. That's why communication is key. You have to let people know what you're thinking, what your status is of whatever you're working on. If you are looking at changing directions on a project or something like that, let people know that that's going to happen. People don't like surprises, because you don't know what the other folks are thinking, as far as, they might have a 3-week plan of how they're going to accomplish a certain task, right? Or get to an endpoint. If that changes out from under them when they wake up in the morning, that could be a problem. But if they knew this was coming beforehand, there's more time to react, more time to accept it, more time to talk it out. So yeah, just be communicative, whether it's writing a comment in a project management software, updating, a PR, a pull request in source code repository, sending an email, a Slack message. Just be communicative across the board as much as you possibly can.
Agreed. And great advice to leave us with. Val, any final thoughts from you?
No, it's been great, Joe. You're very humorous, and you had some great tales and some great advice for those that are listening. So thanks for being on the pod, mate. I
really appreciate it, guys. I'm sorry. I was excited about it from the first time I got the email from you. I wish we'd done it sooner.
Absolutely. Joe, just before we go, we have a quick pop quiz called Tenor, and it is a pop quiz, so 10 questions and 10 quick-fire answers. You up for that?
Oh my God. Remember I said I'm not a project manager.
No, this is not project management related.
Okay.
Well,
okay.
It may be, but anyway, here we go. You touched on it, but question 1, what's your morning routine?
Get up, brush teeth, maybe a quick cup of coffee or tea, and then hop on a call.
Question 2, how do you usually plan out your day?
At this point in time, I try to get a lay of the land as soon as I get to the computer. What changed from the night before, and then I decide kind of what I need to do to get the ball to the next yard line.
Question 3, how do you deal with stress?
Music. I play music. Maybe go for a walk. Generally, music. Music is how I deal with stress.
Nice. Question 4. What's your favorite book, audio, or movie?
Oh my God. Um, there is a movie called Simon Birch. It's based on a book, Tale of Owen Meany. I don't know what it is about that movie, but the first time I saw it, there was like a lot of dust in the room, and this salty discharge was coming out of my eyes. Uh, it's just a good movie. It's just a good movie.
That's great. Question number 5. Who is your hero and why?
Oh my God. That is a very good question. That was a lot of dead air there. Sorry about that. Maybe you can edit that out. Um, that is really a very difficult question. I'm gonna have to really think about that, and I'll make that one an email.
Fantastic. We'll look forward to it. Question 6. What is your favorite sound?
Sound.
Sound.
Um, like I said, I went to college for music. I love synthesizers, and so the sine wave, the pure sine wave, is probably my favorite sound. A tuning fork would be a
Nice.
good example for anyone not familiar with that.
Nice. Nice. Question 7. What is the biggest mistake you've made on a project?
Oh my God, all of them. Um, that is a really hard question to answer. I feel like I'm at a Google interview or something. Where's the whiteboard? You guys want me to code on a board somewhere? Um, wow, that is a really hard question I can't think of one specific, but I would say, maybe not being honest about something and trying to smooth things over when in reality I should just be honest, about either you can't have this or this isn't going to work this way or
Mm.
something like that.
Yeah, it's such a common one, actually.
Mm.
Very,
I
very
can
common.
imagine.
Yeah. Question 8. What would you tell your 10-year-old self?
Uh, don't take Latin. Um, my 10-year-old self, probably, it's going to be okay. Um, I think it's important, people feel this a lot, like when they change jobs, and Val, maybe you can attest to this. There's a lot of like, it makes you nervous, right? But
Mm.
when you look back at your experience, you see that, oh, I was successful changing jobs all these times and everything worked out fine. So I think my advice would be, it's always going to be okay.
Brilliant advice. Question 9. We're almost there. What profession other than your own would you like to have attempted?
Um, I really like the concept of landscaping. Just being outside and like being able to clear your mind while you're shoveling dirt and building things, you know. So yeah, that's kind of appealed to me. That's something when I think of retirement, I'm like, I'm either going to be a landscaper or I'm just going to bag groceries at the grocery store, one or the other.
Nothing wrong with either of those.
No.
Both therapeutic.
Yes.
Last and final question. If you had to spend $1 million in a day, what would you spend it on?
GameStop. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Um, not GameStop.
Not now.
Yeah, not right now. No. I would probably. I like I said, I know a lot of teachers, and I know a lot of There's always a lot of kids that don't have a lot of stuff that they should have as children. Um, I would probably try to do something to make sure that that money got to like families that actually needed it to buy the things they literally need on a day-to-day basis: food, shoes, clothes, stuff like that. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm some philanthropist giving the right answer to get into heaven, but you know that's where that money I think is needed most.
No, very, very noble noble cause and answer if we did have that amount of money to spend.
Right.
But thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. Just to echo what Val said, really appreciate your time, and thank you so much for your insight. And yeah, perhaps we can have that follow-up, that retrospective pod in the future, and we'll look to send you an invite, not via Outlook.
Right.
If we
I
can.
want to actually get it.
Exactly. So, folks, that's all we have time for on this episode, but it doesn't have to stop here. Support our charities and access blogs at projectchatterpodcast.com. Don't forget to hit subscribe on our YouTube channel and your podcast player so you don't miss the next one. A massive thank you to our guest, Joe Zobkiw. Got it right.
Very
and thank
good.
you all.
Come on.
And thank you all for listening. Till next time, we say stay safe, be disruptive, and have fun doing it. From Val and me, it's bye for now.